Maritime Matters is brought to you live by Bahamas Maritime Connection.
What is maritime?
Maritime, simply put, relates to navigation or commerce on the high seas.
Some say money makes the world go round. I say ships move the money that make the world move.
Who navigates those large international ships?
How often are international ships required to be surveyed and inspected?
Maritime also protects our seas and borders by way of our local Bahamas Defense
It is
Force.
very sad to say that out of 1,500 plus ships that are registered under the Bahamian flag, only a very small amount of Bahamians are employed.
Maritime Matters.
Hey, guess what today is? Well, you know today is Tuesday. Oi! And it's time for Captain Glenn. Join you ready on? So everyone, let's gather around. Cause Maritime Matters. He's a native of Andros. Say what? But he grew up in Nassau. Sail around the Bahamas, all around, with the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Hey! Well, you know today is Tuesday. Oh yeah. And it's time for Captain Glenn. Let's do any boy. So everyone, let's gather around your radio. Cause Maritime Matters. Hey! Well, you know today is Tuesday. Say what? And it's time for Captain Glenn. So everyone, let's gather. Cause Maritime Matters.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you and you and you. I am Captain Glenn Bain, and you are now tuned in to Maritime Matters. We humbly apologize for the mishap over the past 2 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes. You may say 5 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes, right? But here we go. We are good to go, and we will be going the long road through. Again, pleasant good evening to you, our valued listening audience. Welcome one. Welcome all. Welcome to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, and our producer for the show tonight is the great one himself, the maestro, Mr. Kishno Jones. We are coming to you live via Love 97 FM studio. This is Tuesday, the 4th day of August, 2026. And if it's a Tuesday, you know the deal. It's maritime. Matters. We encourage that if you're driving and tuning in with us, please do so cautiously and ensure to take your time in getting wherever it is you are trying to get safely. As the saying goes, drive to arrive alive. Our sponsors for tonight's show are same two, the Faithful Two, 101 Pharmacy, and of course, Island Care Pharmacy up there in Grand Bahama. We are also sponsored, or secondly sponsored, by Bahamas Maritime Connection Limited, where we provide a full slate of ISPS maritime security services. Good night, Auntie May, my good young auntie up in there in Freeport, 93 years old and going strong, people. And she's getting stronger. Strong. My auntie may say she going for 100. Take it or leave it. Tonight, we continue in our discussions on the 2026 war in the Gulf. Now, we know this war was going on since the latter part of February of this year, which make it March, April, May, June, July. Now we get into August. Over 5 months. Over 5 months, people. And it's been in and out and up and down. And right now it's kind of blinky again. this war has been escalating and de-escalating and escalating and de-escalating and frozen for a couple of times and from the looks of it right now it's frozen again. But what is the reason why the war is going up and down and up and down? Because agreements are being made and agreements are being broken. I had a friend who used to say, man, look here, I don't make promises, man, because a promise never made could not be broken. In other words, if he don't make a promise, he can't broke it. So he don't make promises. But, agreements have to happen. Negotiations have to happen. And this is a daily thing even in business. This is a daily thing internationally, domestically, even in your family, you have to negotiate certain things, right? So, because of negotiations not being, or conclusions of negotiations not being adhered to by all, the war starts and stops and starts and stops. And very recently, because you can almost call it a one-way war, eh? We can almost call it a one-way war because, simply put, the attack is really on Iran. And Iran lashes in retaliation. And when Iran lashes in retaliation, countries that are not involved in attacking Iraq are feeling the crunch. Thus, the ceasefires and the bombardments again, and the ceasefires again, and the blockage, and the opening of the strait, and the closing of the strait, and the blockage, and all this, it's like a puzzle. It's like war's a chess, just like a chess game, or a checkers game, whatever kind of game you want it, where you position strategically based on the next person's move. And this war is no different, it's very different from other wars, but it's no different from war in general. Pieces are laid out, and as it appears, there is a ceasefire, and while the ceasefire is going on, President Trump stated a few days ago that there's going to be some bombardment like never seen before. A few weeks back, or maybe a few short months back, President Trump made the statement that Iran is going to be bombarded into the Stone Ages. Well, paraphrasing. And just last week said that if Iran do not desist attacking vessels trying to go through the strait, they're going to be bombed like never before. Paraphrasing again. So what was being anticipated? Because now Iran, over the past 4 or 5 weeks, Iran was being bombarded every day, up to about a week ago. And President Trump decided, that's enough of this, man. We've been bombarding them. They wouldn't behave. They wouldn't do what we want them to do. So we are going to bombard them like never before. But unfortunately, the mindset behind bombing Iran like never been bombed before kind of got the attention of those nations that share the Persian Gulf, that are directly opposite Iran and have no protection from them being bombarded by Iran. And so those countries started to scream out to President Trump that they don't think it's a good idea. Because if that happens, the war or the retaliation by Iran would be against them. Because see, all of those Gulf states, all, I say, except Iran. And if we start with, well, is Oman one of them? I think Oman is one of them, right? We start with Oman that shares the Strait of Hormuz with Iran. Those are the two countries that the bottleneck of the Strait of Hormuz is very tight. And that bottleneck is at the entrance/exit of the Persian Gulf. So they are the two that decide, because Persian Gulf is a dead end, and once you get in there, you got to come back out the same way. You can't go through there and have a thoroughfare going somewhere else. No. You're in, and it's a lock. It's landlocked, except you come back out through the Strait of Hormuz. And so the two countries that control that bottleneck, or that bottleneck alliance, is Oman in the south and Iran in the north. And of course, Iran is far more powerful than Oman. But once you in the Persian Gulf, once you get through that Strait of Hormuz to come in, the countries that share that Persian Gulf, because Iran takes up a whole side, the whole eastern and northern section of the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, lies on the coast of Iran. And then when you get to the curve to come back along the south, you start off with Iraq, which shares border with Iran and also has a small section, small compared to what Iran has, and what Saudi Arabia has, a small section of the Persian Gulf, which is very wealthy with oil. Now, one thing we got to remember is the entire Persian Gulf is oil rich. Oil rich to the extent that it have over 20% of all oil extracted worldwide. And when you add all of them together, there's no other place in the world that has that much concentration of oil. And so those other Gulf states that you would see starts with Oman, then you got the UAE, or United Arab Emirates, which is where all our people been the other day, a nice fancy place. I need to pull up a picture. A nice fancy place where all our people went the other day to have fun and all the rest. Okay, the Persian Gulf. The UAE, which is Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I've been to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and they're very, very... Dubai has the two largest malls in the world. Dubai has the largest, tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa. Dubai has the first 7-star hotel in the world. And they have the Palm with hotels galore. And Dubai is a place that people want to see. So you can imagine, excuse me, the leadership of Dubai, of UAE, which includes Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and one or two other places, right? Fujura and places like that. They sit right across the way from Iran. With all those beautiful, luxurious buildings, one of the most fantastic airports in the world. The airport look better than most malls, right? And if Iran was to lash out, because there was a time along the line, I think, where the U.S. started to hit bridges and that type of thing in Iran, and railways, and they just wanted to stop all commuting. And I don't know to what extent that happened. But if Iran was to now retaliate and hit bridges and highways so that people can no longer get from one area can't get from, say, Dubai to Abu Dhabi or elsewhere, that will be a miserable, right now it's very miserable for those Gulf states, Because if you think of it, each and every one of those Gulf states depend on selling oil for their riches. They're all rich. Every single one of them, filthy rich. Some filthier than others, but all are filthy rich. And all of them, for the past, since this war started in February, were not making half of what they would normally make. And in fact, they were not, in most cases, they were not even making 10% of what they normally would make. So 90% of their income. And not only that, they were unable to receive cargo ships with containers for food and all the luxuries in life because they got money going to bed. And so the food shortage, there's water shortage. Do you know that you can hardly find water in that area because everything underground is almost oil? As a matter of fact, when I was in Dartmouth, I found out from some of the candidates at Dartmouth from Qatar and Kuwait and some of those Arab countries, even Iran. We had people from Iran in Dartmouth while I was there. And they would tell you that water in their country is more expensive than oil. And we all found that crazy to believe. But oil is costs nothing to them because they got oil piled up like that. So all of these oil wealthy countries, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and of course, Iraq. All of them shares the next half of the Persian Gulf. So Iran got a whole half of the Persian Gulf coast. And all of those countries put together share the next half. So that should tell you that, and of course, Saudi Arabia is almost as big as Iran. So Saudi Arabia got the lion's share. Saudi Arabia, when you compare Saudi Arabia with those other countries, Saudi Arabia has far more coastline than all of them put together. You could double them. And then that's Saudi Arabia. That's why they got Saudi Arabia, I think, have the second, like Iran, would have more oil available than the rest. And then Saudi Arabia. And then, I don't know, must be UAE, because UAE got plenty of the coast too. So those countries all depend very, very heavily on the ability to export their oil out of the bottom of the Persian Gulf. And so for the past 5-6 months, they couldn't export because the war going on and tankers that come to them were not being allowed in. Because the Strait of Hormuz was being blocked and locked by Iran, and any ship trying to pass through there that Iran didn't bless was being bombarded and had to turn back. And there were times when no ship could have passed through there, most of the time, while Iran was being bombarded. And so to escalate this thing and really go harder on Iran means now Iran could escalate things and go harder on those Gulf states. That's Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Oman. And if Iran was to do that, let's say Iran break up oil there infrastructure where the ships come to take oil. It will be years before they can put that back together the way it's supposed to be for ships that come and carry oil. If Iran was to break up some of those big fancy buildings, like those malls, well, of course, that's too much people. I would think that Iran wouldn't want to target places where a lot of people are in those countries. Because when this war is over, people, when this war is complete and finished, and it will be finished at some point, these countries, these Gulf state countries, will all have to be harmonized and live together, because you can't move from where you are. You can't move your country somewhere else. You stuck right there opposite Iran till eternity. If you are Bahrain or Qatar or Kuwait. And what has been happening over the past decades is these countries, because they are so wealthy, they wanted to feel protected. And you may say, protected from who? Protected from Iran. Because Iran had the strongest navy. Iran had the strongest army. Iran had the strongest air force. You guys remember, Iran had the strongest army because Iran have over 90 million people. These other countries have peanuts as far as people compared to Iran. When you add all of their people together, they're as much as Iran. Just like when you add up all their land together, they're not as much as Iran, right? And so, because they are only a part of the puzzle to make up the entire Gulf, they felt we need some protection. And what they did over the past decades is they got in bed with the U.S. and they allowed the U.S. to put military bases in their country. Because now, as far as the U.S. is concerned, and I'm not talking President Trump or President Barack Obama, President Clinton, President Bush. I'm not talking no particular president. I mean all the U.S. presidents over the past decades have held firm that they have interests in the Persian Gulf and they want to protect their interests in the Persian Gulf. And what is the interest? The interest is they want to have a free flow of oil coming to the U.S. from the Persian Gulf. And so the U.S. established military bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia in particular, in Oman, to say, we are right here. And if Iran try anything with any of y'all, we here for them. And anybody who knows anything about world power will know that the United States is by far the most powerful country in the world when it comes to the military might. No other country comes close. And the closest probably would be China. It used to be Russia, but Russia done fall a little down to third or fourth spot, right? China would be now the second largest military threat or establishment in the world. Even the great United Kingdom, Britain, fell down the slope somewhere. Still in the top 10. As a matter of fact, probably still in the top 5. But the U.S. are so powerful that they have hundreds, if not thousands, of military bases all over the world. And I say all over the world. You go to Italy alone, they got over 100. in the Persian Gulf, in every country that they have military bases. And so, with all of that strategic setting up, it's supposed to be where the United States only have to lift one arm, and any country in that region is mashed up. Because the great US targeted them. And in addition to all of those bases, the US have some 11 or 12 aircraft carriers. They have a whole drill load of destroyers, submarines, ballistic submarines, nuclear submarines, you name it. And so they have a flotilla of ships creating a blockade on the outside of the Persian Gulf. And you may ask, well, okay, what about inside? Why don't they come and block inside? They can't block inside, people. Because if they try to bring one of them aircraft carriers or one of those destroyers or even a submarine inside the Persian Gulf, they got to pass the Strait of Hormuz. And although they're so powerful and they got all these weapons on board, they are a sitting duck for the launching of drones and the launching of ballistic missiles and the launching of whatever Iran decides they're going to set up and launch at that big, because that's a big target if it's going to come through the Strait of Hormuz. So the U.S., while they have this huge flotilla controlling any ship that want to get even near the Persian Gulf, they cannot come in. They cannot even come near, excuse me, to Iran. Because some of them came near and they got bombed from the land. Because we got to remember now, and I don't want nobody thinking I's no fan of Iran, or I's no fan of China, or I's no fan of the U.S. Well, of course I'm a fan of the U.S. Love the U.S. U.S. love us. But I am calling this world affair as it is, or as being reported over the various international networks, eh? And so that flotilla is only allowing ships in to the Persian Gulf that the U.S. wants to be able to go into the Persian Gulf. And when they reach that Strait of Hormuz to go in, if Iran says, I don't, we don't want y'all going, you got to go back. Because they could bomb you right there. So it's a twofold situation for any ship that is going to freely commute in the Gulf, take on fuel, and come back out. And that 100% of ships that were doing that freely all along has been reduced to less than 10%. Perhaps even less than 5%. But the reality is, the U.S. allows some tankers to go in. And some of those same tankers Iran allows. And most of them go into Iran. And the U.S. is allowing Iran to sell fuel. Why? You say, well, this can't make no sense. Why is the U.S. allowing Iran to have tankers and sell fuel and sell back out? They're making money. But the real deal behind fuel coming out of the Gulf from anywhere is the more tankers can leave the Gulf, the lesser fuel will cost worldwide. So the U.S. doesn't want to stop commerce, because when you stop commerce in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf, or cause no fuel at all to leave, it makes it even tighter on the outside. And so if Iran is going to allow some ships in, the U.S. probably wouldn't stop them. Because when Iran is allowing them in, they're going to get fuel and take it out of the Gulf, which will ease the tension worldwide for the cost of fuel. So that's why it's still happening, eh? And when Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE, and Bahrain, of course, realized that if President Trump was to go ahead and press those buttons and really give it to Iran with all the U.S. might, Iran will still be there, although they'll be bombed to smithereens. They can still be there. All they got to do is get up one rocket launcher or two and send rockets across the Gulf, because you can't have no interceptors in the middle of the Gulf, in the middle of the water, so they can intercept anything coming across the Gulf. So those countries are exposed, fully exposed to Iran, just like the Strait of Hormuz is. And those countries need to look ahead. They need to look ahead to ensure that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 1 year from now, we don't want to be in a situation where we have been bombarded as a result of retaliation by Iran. Because Iran doesn't have any issues with those countries in particular, and most of them don't have any issues with Iran. But because they have facilitated military might from the U.S. to put armies and air force and airstrips and what you call it, where all those military airplanes are kept, Air Force bases in their country right across from Iran. Iran is saying, you are facilitating them to be this close to us, so we can retaliate against you. And we've reached stalemates as a result of not only the Gulf states realizing that the U.S. cannot really protect them from missiles being shot from mainland Iran. Although they have all of this military power, more than everybody else in the world, that power cannot stop one ballistic missile from coming in. Even if it could stop 10, it may can't stop 15 one time. And Iran is loaded with drones and missiles. They still bringing them from underground and letting them loose when they want to. And when you think they ain't got no more, they bring more than you think they had before. So it is extremely difficult for the most powerful, when it comes to military and financial resources, country in the world to bring Iran into submission. Because of the geographical position, the geopolitical position of Iran where it comes to the Persian Gulf. See now, 10 years from now, and I mentioned this on a show before, 10 years from today, the strength that Iran has as a result of being so close to these Gulf state countries and having unimpeded ability to cause destruction in those countries and have unimpeded ability to cause destruction of a ship trying to commute the Strait of Hormuz. Because they have this control now, 10 years from now, that wouldn't mean too much to the world. Because the world would not be depending on that fuel the way it is now. Because global warming is on the rise. And last year at some point, I remember a show where I did some research. And for the first time in the history of the world, not the history of the world, well, the history of since you had all this man-made machinery and whatnot. Solar overtook coal. Because coal was the number one fuel source in the world for many, many, many years. Now we got fuel and stuff, but coal was providing a lot of energy. But of course, coal also gives off carbon dioxide, eh? And for the first time, solar had more percentage of energy provision than coal, because you got the fuel sources like diesel or gas, fuel oil, you got nuclear and all the rest of that, and all of them contribute to the 100% of energy the world uses. But for the first time, solar was number one, was last year. And 10 years from now, you probably have solar, number one by far, and then wind farm right on their tail. And fuel oil and diesel and gasoline and natural gas will be way down to the bottom, because nuclear go overtake and can have more than them and all. I want you to know we got a lot of nuclear plants that countries are using to supply electricity, or should I say energy, for those countries to have electricity and whatnot. So back to the Persian Gulf. We had a stalemate where President Trump decided he's going to do a large-scale, biggest ever bombardment. And the very next morning he decided, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to do this bombardment. Because like I said, the Gulf state countries like Dubai and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain and Kuwait, they screamed out, oh, President Trump, we know we with you, but please, you can't do that because they could do us in. So said, so done. So we've reached the situation now in the Gulf where Iran is holding the trump cards. Because no matter how they are bombarded, do you know that the U.S. sank every single warship Iran had? And they had a lot of them. And they sent them all over the place to try and get away. And all of them was tracked down and bombed, and now they all at the bottom of the sea. So they don't have no navy. Their army is not involved in any conflict because the U.S. have not put ground troops in Iran. And it's not anticipated that they will. Mind you, that's always an option. But it's not anticipated that they will. Not only because Iran is so mountainous and the terrain is rough and they got tunnels that they could come up and have an advantage. That's not the main reason why. First of all, the U.S. don't want to have their people being killed. Even if they're killing up a lot of Iranians, they don't want their people to be killed in response, eh? Plus, putting troops on the ground means they got to battle 110 degrees heat. And then recently, I was listening to a program where they said, what if some of them get injured and they want to pull them out? The same way they come in, they got to go out. And in the heat. Summer's not a good time to have war in the Persian Gulf in any state because it's extremely hot. And so the conditions are not right to put boots on the ground. And it's always going to be very difficult to win a war with Iran by putting boots on the ground. And again, there needs to be an end to this war. Somehow, somebody needs to come forward and say, okay, we no longer got a challenge. We give in, and the war has to stop. And that cry is coming all the time from the Gulf state countries. They want this war to stop because every single hour they are losing billions of dollars. Every single hour. And the sooner this war stops, the sooner they start making their money back. The sooner this war stops, the sooner they could have food and supplies and tourists could come back and all the rest of that. Because right now everything is on standstill in the Gulf. People are just hoping this could over with. And so you have many in the heirs of Mr. Trump, many people that he is close with, many that he respects, many that the U.S. have been doing business with for decades. And President Trump would know that they don't deserve to be attacked. And so that's the little soft spot that kind of holds back. And you get some pundits saying that there's no exit ramp for the U.S. They were coerced into the war, which some say is really an Israeli war. The Israelites wanted this attack on Iran. And when this attack on Iran happened, they were able to freely move and create buffer zones and take up more property and more space from the Palestinians. The Gaza Strip, Lebanon, and it goes on. And so, if this war was to stop, with Iran demanding, one of the demands being Israel must withdraw from the Palestinian states, from the Gaza Strip, from Lebanon, from the East Bank and that type of thing, West Bank. Then that means all these years that Israel was gaining grounds on the Lebanese turf, they gotta give it up. That's what that means. And so the fact that Iran now has cards that they are holding, they got trump cards that they could make demands and insist on certain things. It's not looking good for the Israelis. Prime Minister Benjamin B. Netanyahu or Bibi Netanyahu is now getting a lot of stress. Because not only Iran, but the majority of countries in the world, now along with the U.S., is saying to him, and has been saying to him, you're going to have to withdraw from those people's place. And of course, it's the last thing he would want to do after all that gain over the years. So the war is, while the US and Iran has their share of conflicts, the US and Israel have their arrangements as well and agreements, and the US is doing some things looking out for their interests as well. So with Iran having trump cards, the US is in the middle now trying to find a way to pacify their bosom buddies in Israel, and to also have Iran agree to stop the war. And stopping the war primarily because the Strait of Hormuz is controlled by Iran and will always be controlled by Iran. And it's actually causing ships not being able to trade oil reserves or oil out of the Persian Gulf. And that no trade of 20+% of worldwide oil reserve or resource is missing from many countries that depended on it. Now they got to go elsewhere to get it. Now oil keep rising. The price of oil keep rising worldwide, especially here in the Bahamas. Boy, we feeling the pinch every day. And you see the gas stations full. Eh? Gas stations full. We see it all the time. And I went to the gas station, this is over the weekend. And my favorite pump attendant, an old man, I must say, is I old and he older than me. And he came there and he said to me, I don't understand. Say, we got you. Say, I know you. I don't know you personally, but you just come, and every time you come, you just get plenty gas. I tell him I want $99 weight in my truck, right? And my truck, that even ain't got 3/4. But that's what it is. I say, give me $98. I tip him $2. $98 weight of gas. And he tell me, say, you and about 4 other customers, 5 of y'all. Y'all just come, and when y'all come for gas, y'all come for gas. He said, but the rest of these people, $10, $5, $10. I said, but $10, that's just over one. $5 even in a gallon. So he said, yeah, but that's why the pump's always full. So we can keep walking up and down going for gas, but they can't even tip me because the amount of gas they're getting, I know they ain't got no more money. And then you wonder, what is $10 weight of gas going to do for a truck? But sometimes people can't afford it. They want a $10 just to go make one run. And to make another run, they get put in another 10. But it is what it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to my crazy voice over the past hour or so. Well, not that long. Let's say half hour. And I am Captain Glenn Bain. The show is Maritime Matters. And we were talking, running on about what's going on in the international world today with the war in the Gulf, the escalation and de-escalation, and trying to explain some of the linkages that feeds this war. Some of the reasons why you have the ceasefires. Some of the reasons who's holding what cards and who's in jeopardy and why ships can't go. And they're the things we've been discussing. And so we will take our first break, which will probably be our only break. And when we return, there's some other parts to this. And we'll talk a little bit about you getting involved if you want to make that call. So please hold the line until we return with Maritime Matters.
Captain Glenn Bain, it's your invitation to sail along with me aboard the MV Maritime Bahamas. Join the discussion as we interview various Bahamians from the maritime sector. Topics will cover activities engaging mailboats, ferry boats, jet skis, international ships, yachts, defense force patrol boats, fishing vessels, tugboats, and so on. Informative, provocative, intriguing. Maritime Bahamas, airing weekly, Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. on Love 97 FM. So do join us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Headed for the Frisco Bay.
At One-on-One Pharmacy, our friendly staff is ready to serve you. Visit us today for all your prescription and over-the-counter needs at our East Street South or Charles Saunders Highway location. We're open Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and from 9 to 4 on Sundays. In a rush? Send your refill scripts online at oneononepharmacy.com or ask about our convenient pickup service. One-on-One Pharmacy, providing personal health care with people at heart.
Sitting in the morning sun, now we sitting in the evening sun, watching the ships roll in, then I watch them roll away again. Sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll. Sitting on the dock of the bay. Hey, guess what today is? Well, you know today is Tuesday. And it's time for Captain Glenn. Are you ready on? So everyone, let's gather around. With Maritime Matters. Even if I just say, what? But he grew up in Nassau. Sail around the Bahamas, all around the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Hey, well, you know today is Tuesday. Oh yeah, and it's time for Captain Glenn. Ready for it?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You are listening to Maritime Matters. I am your host, Captain Glenn Bain, a producer for the night, Mr. Kishno Jones. The primary purpose of our show is to sensitize Bahamians of opportunities in the maritime sector. We also cover current maritime issues from the domestic and international maritime feeds. Of course, we're doing a lot of international maritime feeds, and our primary discussion is on the Gulf of Hormuz, which is holding the world at ransom, causing fuel to go way up, and all the rest of that good stuff. The phone number to reach us, should you wish to get in on the discussion, and boy, I know some of y'all want to get in on this discussion. Man, y'all gotta want to get in on it. This kind of sweet to talk about, kind of sweet to listen to, but somebody gotta have some contribution as to what they feel going on, or how this is gonna pan out, or whatever, pertaining to the war in the Gulf. The numbers to reach us on is 326-8255 or 322-3633. Again, if you want to reach us and have a little contribution, the number to reach us on is 326-8255 or 322-3633. To hear a replay of this show or any of our previous shows, simply hit us up at any time you wish via our YouTube page. That's Maritime Matters Bahamas. Just go to YouTube on your electronic device and type into the search box Maritime Matters, Bahamas. So let's talk maritime. And as you know, we've already kind of crunched the situation with the Gulf War, the escalation and de-escalation, and whether or not President Trump and his team would have an exit ramp, whether or not Iran will hold out with those trump cards to demand more. Again, 322-8255 if you want in on a discussion. And now we're talking about the global rise in fuel costs. And you would know just as well as I would that right here in the Bahamas, our electricity bill has been going haywire. Our electrical service has been going haywire. And all of this has something to do with the cost of fuel. And we as a country, as far as our politicians are concerned, are going to move away from that bunker seat, that high-end fossil fuel. Well, diesel is even more costly, right? But we can move away from the less costly one than diesel, the fuel oil, and incorporate natural gas. So the liquefied natural gas will come here by the big ship, pass through the pipes, go on to the regasification plant out Clifton Pier, and be converted to just natural gas, the vapor, and then sent to the machinery that will distribute power to our grid. And that should cause our bill to be severely reduced, significantly reduced. But instead of reduction now, look like our bill getting higher, because we said that we were working on fixing the hemorrhaging from the electrical grid that services all of us. And from the looks of it, as those hemorrhages are fixed, or if they're being fixed, then the bill still ain't going down. But we have to factor in the cost of fuel for the machines that keep electricity circulating around our grid. Excuse me. See what happens, people, is we have the big ships come out Clifton Pier, and they pump the fuel into the tank farms. Because out Clifton Pier, you have a series of tank farms where they have these big fuel storage tanks. And those tank farms feed primarily the BTC huge machines. They got 2 or 3 huge big ones out Clifton Pier, eh? And those machines need fuel to create electricity. And they're the primary source of electricity for the entire island of New Providence. And, excuse me, when the fuel comes in, it is taxed by the government. There's a price that, because of this war, the price have increased. And when the price increases, the tax increases, because the government tax on a percentage basis, not on a fixed amount. Government say, whatever the fuel costs, we can get 20% of that or 30% of that. And I don't know all the details about what the tax percentage is. But the government ain't easing up on us to say, we'll pull that percentage down if it get over a certain amount. Or we'll cap off that we wouldn't tax more than this percentage of fuel or this amount of money at any time. The government has go up with the fuel costs and makes us at the pump pay even more. But that's why would the government not do that? Because the government wants money to do things with. So the government ain't gonna never turn no money down, no matter how much it hurt us, eh? Well, we know Mia Mottley, Prime Minister Mia Mottley in Barbados, she did that. She decided she could take some of the tax off fuel so that the people in Barbados would not have to pay those heavy costs that is being spurred up even higher because of government taxes. Boy, if our government do that, I don't know if they'll ever get voted out again, eh? But when those fuel come in, and those big machines use them, and they convert them into to energy that comes from Clifton Pier into the city by way of what you call high voltage lines. And those high voltage lines come all the way into the city, and then they are broken down into smaller sectors of high voltage, and then they are broken down into transformers that take the high voltage and convert it into higher current. They could convert it into 120 volts, which would give us more current in our house, or give us the right kind of current in our house from those high voltage lines. And that's why you got these transformers all over the place. And whenever one of them blow, a lot of people's house ain't got no current because it was linked to that particular transformer. I mean, it is what it is, right? So it all comes from that fuel out Clifton Pier. And then we have, for all the vehicles, all the cars, you have fleets of trucks or container trucks. They call them tanker trucks that take the fuel, diesel and gas and whatnot, from those tank farms in Clifton Pier to our various gas stations. So our cars could pull up to the gas station. All of us don't need to go to Clifton Pier to get fuel, eh? Because they bring it up down to us. But the cost have to be based on what they pay at Clifton Pier, and then they got to pay for the trucks, because, you know, trucks ain't cheap. Them kind of trucks ain't cheap to buy, and they ain't cheap to maintain, and they ain't cheap to operate, because drivers got to drive them, and then they take them to the gas stations, and everybody in the gas stations got to be paid, eh? Gas station owner, he got bills he got to pay, and so what you pay at the pump, everybody got to eat off that. The people at the gas station, they got to be able to feed their families. The people who drive the truck, they got to be able to feed their families. The people who work in the tank farm and at those facilities, they got to be able to feed their families. So all of this money that we paying at the pump has to feed, and then the government get half of it to put in their coffers, because they gotta fix things in the country, eh? And so this war in the Gulf, we see how it's impacting the Bahamas. Because the cost of fuel worldwide is what we got to pay. And all countries in the world got to pay almost the same thing, eh? So you got some countries where they're as fortunate as us. People can't even go to the gas station for $10 gas because they ain't got $10. People got to start walking and catching the bus in the hot sun. You walk to the bus stop, and then he's like our good friend say back in the day, you got sweat. Let me stop. You got sweat. And that's just how it's happening. It's happening, eh? So that is what we are faced with. That's what we are faced with. The global rise of cost of fuel. It impacts our local gas station price of gas. It impacts our grid being fed from Clifton Pier with fossil fuel. And what is the answer to this? At this moment, there are answers, but there's no big answer. First of all, we don't have it as bad as we could have it because of electric vehicles. Even if it's only 10% of the vehicles on the road are electric, and I believe it's a little higher than that now, and boy, it's getting higher all the time. That means those 10% of vehicles don't have to go to gas station pumps. But they still have to charge those batteries in those vehicles. So when they get home or to the office or wherever they have their charging station, they are using energy from the grid to charge their battery. And when they use that energy from the grid, it causes that meter to go up and that light bill to go higher. Excuse me. But in most cases, I understand from way back that even though they are taking energy from the grid to charge those batteries, the cost at the end of the month is far cheaper than it would cost them if they had to go and keep filling up with gas at the pumps for that same vehicle or for a vehicle doing the same amount of runs. So EVs are saving us a lot of fuel costs because those cars don't have to be part of the fuel parcel. People with solar on their roof. The solar is capturing energy from the sun. And they have an inverter that creates or transposes or transforms that energy from the sun to 120 volts and amps for us to use in our houses, depending on how much energy they trap from the sun on the roof through by way of the PV, what you call them things, they put on your roof. Because of those particular homes and offices and buildings don't have to take fuel from the grid to the level they used to take it from the grid. And so the grid don't need all that amount of fuel no more. So let's say 10% of homes have solar panels and solar system. And even if they tie to the grid, then they feed into the grid during the daytime anyway, right? Which makes the grid even more rich. And if we can get more homes to solarize, then we'll have less need for fuel in the country. If we could get more vehicles to more people to buy EVs instead of combustible engine or ICE, internal combustible engines, then we will save more fuel in the electrical grid for people who need it. And we'll need less fuel in the country. And you know, it's things like EVs and solars. And in those cold countries that don't get the sun on a round the year basis, they use windmills. And some people now are splitting the water molecules and using hydro power. And many countries use nuclear to generate their power. Over 20% of the power generated worldwide is done by way of nuclear reactor plants. But we don't think the Bahamas ready for nuclear, eh? I don't think we want. We don't need nuclear yet. We don't need nuclear at all, really. We have what you call solar. We are deep in the solar belt. Year round we get sunshine. Of course, sometimes it go rain, sometimes it go overcast. But for the most part, you will be able to, if you go off the grid and you get enough solar panels and enough storage batteries in your home, you could live without paying BPL. Yes, it's going to cost you some good money to put that in place. But once you get that in place, 5 years later, you don't pay for that. But who got the money to do it up front, eh? A couple of people do. And I would encourage you to go ahead and let's do that. So, where does this all lead? Over the next 10 minutes, I only got about 10 minutes left, right? I want this one explained based on my research over the years when it comes to this renewable energy thing. I'm moving away from the war now, right? We have, on a global scale, countries that provide electric vehicles. We know Tesla is a big one of them, right in the US. But Tesla, on a worldwide basis, is not one of the largest. They're large. But the largest are the, what they call them, build your dreams, the BYDs. And then they got a lot of other ones coming out now. And I can tell you that from a worldwide perspective, the world is moving toward electric vehicles. And most of those electric vehicles are built by China, produced by China, and being sold by China. China probably would have more than 50% of worldwide available electric vehicles. And if that continues to move forward, in addition to vehicles, China would have, because right now China probably has over 80% of the solar panels and the inverters and the storage batteries. And China positioned itself to do these things because China have ready access to what you call rare earth minerals, the cobalt and all the rest of them things that the batteries need, that the solar panels need. And those things are not just available anywhere. But China has it in abundance. And so there's an abundance of that stuff also in Greenland. And what do we know about Greenland? Also in Canada, and what do we know about Canada? Those are countries that recently we heard after President Donald Trump took power, he wanted to annex China. And the Chinese government almost gone crazy. Chinese people, no, that ain't happen. And then months later you would hear the US is going to own Greenland, take over Greenland. And of course, Belgium, who are the custodians of Greenland, decided they're going to stand up and say, no, that'll be Greenland come under us, and be prepared to fight for Greenland. How will fight the US? I mean, everybody know that had to have been a joke, right? But somehow, the European countries got together and they were able to talk President Trump out of forcefully taking over Greenland. And the reason why Greenland was so important is because Greenland seemed to be a country that has under its earth a lot of those same rare earth minerals that could be used to make solar panels, to make electric vehicle batteries, and that type of thing. So if a country like the US could have a ready supply of these things, they'd be able to compete with China when it comes to making those vehicles, when it comes to making solar panels, when it comes to making windmills for wind farms. Because if nobody's going to substantially compete with China, what's going to happen in the next 10 years? China is going to continue to make plenty money and eventually, unlikely, become the richest country in the world. Because right now, they have a budget of over 20 trillion. It's like 21, 22 trillion dollars every year is their revenue. And the U.S. is about 10 trillion more than them, right? But over the past, say, 10 years, China was under 5 trillion. So if that trajectory was to increase, and it looks like it probably will, China will probably be over 40 trillion a year, and then over 50 trillion a year. And China will become the wealthiest country in the world, and their military. You remember now, China's military. China has probably but 2 or 3 aircraft carriers today. But what China wants over the next 10 years, they've ordered about 10 more aircraft carriers. So they basically have almost as much aircraft carriers on the sea as the U.S. If the U.S. continues to retain only about 13. And then you'll have another country that could match the power of the U.S. on the sea. And, of course, you know they can do the same thing with aircrafts and fighter jets and all the rest of that stuff. So they would have money piled up like they to do anything they want to. And then the power will be shared between 2 big countries. And I don't know if any other country can get in that realm where they're making over $20 trillion a year. No time soon. But that is, I guess, part of the reason. And I ain't getting in people's business to the extent where I could tell you how it looked to me when it comes to what these world powers doing. But I'll say that much because all of that is common knowledge. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up. Because the phone did not have any ring. I don't see anybody try to call in to discuss. So it's one or two things. Either you don't like the topic, or you just want to be educated on the topic. And either one of those works for me. I hope it's you just want to be educated on the topic. Because, yeah, I mean, you ain't had nothing to say, eh? So I say to you, thank you for listening to Maritime Matters. I say to my sponsors, thank you for continuing to support Maritime Matters. I say to my good producer, thank you for keeping things ticking on the wheels of steel. I say to my good anime up in Freeport, good night, anime. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we say Maritime Matters, tick, 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 tick. Out.
Today is Tuesday. And it's time for Captain Glenn. Are you ready on? So everyone, let's gather around. Because Maritime Matters. He's a native of Andros, but he grew up in Nassau. Sail around the Bahamas, all around the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. Hey, well, you know today is Tuesday. Oh yeah, and it's time for Captain Glenn. Ready, boys? So everyone, let's gather around your radio. Because Maritime Matters. Hey, well, you know today is Tuesday. Say what? And it's time for Captain Glenn.